Lightning didn't strike twice, but bad luck certainly did. For Ruby, a waitress drowning in debt the night was supposed to be just another shift of wiping tables and counting pennies. But when she stepped into the pouring rain and found a shivering, well-dressed boy collapsing in the mud, her life shattered in an instant. She didn't know she was holding the heir to the city's most dangerous criminal empire. She didn't know that saving his life would put a target on her back and bring a man into her world who could burn it all down or save her soul. This is the story of how a single act of kindness started a war. The rain in Seattle didn't just fall, it hammered against the roof of the Rusty Anchor diner like a judgment. Inside, the smell of stale coffee and frying grease hung heavy in the air. Ruby wiped down the laminate counter, her movements mechanical. Her uniform, a pale blue dress that had seen better days, was stained near the hem with ketchup. "Ruby, you done with the grease trap yet?" The manager, a sweaty man named Stan, who smelled perpetually of onions, barked from the kitchen window. "Just finishing the front, Stan. I'll take the trash out and then do the trap." Ruby replied, her voice tired but steady. She brushed a stray lock of dark hair behind her ear. She was 24, but felt 40. Between her mother's lingering medical bills from St. Jude's Medical Center and the rent hike on her studio apartment on 4th Street, sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford. She grabbed the heavy black trash bags, heaving them over her shoulder. Pushing open the back door, the wind assaulted her instantly. The alleyway behind the Rusty Anchor was a grim place, usually occupied by stray cats and overflowing dumpsters. Tonight it was a river. Ruby tossed the bags into the bin, the metal clang swallowed by a crack of thunder. She turned to rush back inside, desperate for warmth when she saw it. Or rather, saw him. Huddled behind a stack of wooden pallets, partially submerged in a puddle of oily water, was a shape too small to be a man. Ruby squinted against the stinging rain. It was a boy. He couldn't have been more than 7 years old. "Hey!" Ruby shouted, running over her canvas sneakers, soaking through instantly. "Hey, kid! You can't be out here." The boy didn't move. As Ruby got closer, her heart hammered against her ribs. He wasn't dressed like the usual runaways she saw in this part of town. He wore a tailored wool coat that probably cost more than her car, and his shoes were leather, though ruined now by the mud. She dropped to her knees, the asphalt scraping her skin. "Can you hear me?" She turned him over. His face was pale, almost blue in the flickering light of the alleyway street lamp. His lips were parted, and his breath came in ragged, terrifying rasps. His eyes were rolled back. "Oh, God!" Ruby gasped. She touched his forehead. He was burning up, yet shivering violently. A seizure, hypothermia, an allergic reaction. She didn't know, but she knew he was dying. "Stan!" She screamed toward the back door, but the wind carried her voice away. She looked at the boy's chest. It was barely moving. There was no time to wait for an ambulance. The response time in this neighborhood was 30 minutes on a good night. In this storm, it would be an hour. Adrenaline, sharp and cold, flooded her veins. Ruby scooped the boy up. He was dead weight, heavy and limp. She groaned with the effort, her muscles screaming as she stumbled toward her rusted 2005 sedan, parked near the grease trap. She wrestled the back door open and laid him across the back seat. "Hang on, honey. Just hang on," she whispered, her hands shaking as she fumbled for her keys. She jumped into the driver's seat, the engine sputtering, before roaring to life with a concerning rattle. Ruby didn't care. She slammed the car into reverse tires, screeching against the wet pavement, and peeled out of the alley. She drove like a maniac. She ran the red light at 5th and Elm, dodging a honking taxi. She glanced in the rearview mirror. The boy hadn't moved. "Don't you dare die on me," she hissed, tears mingling with the rain on her face. "I don't know who you are, but you are not dying tonight." She didn't notice the black SUV that had been idling across the street from the diner. She didn't notice it pull out and begin to tail her, keeping a predatory distance. All she saw was the glowing red emergency sign of St. Jude's Medical Center in the distance. She screeched into the ambulance bay, cutting off a paramedic van. Before the vehicle had even fully stopped, Ruby was out the door. She ripped the back door open and pulled the boy into her arms, screaming at the top of her lungs. "Help, someone help!" "He's not breathing right." Nurses and a doctor rushed out, swarming her. They took the boy from her arms, placing him on a gurney. "Status," the doctor barked. "Found him in an alley, high fever, seizing, unresponsive." Ruby rattled off, breathless. As they wheeled him through the double doors, Ruby tried to follow, but a nurse held her back. "Ma'am, you have to stay here. We need to work." "But he was alone. He has no one." "We've got him," the nurse said firmly, the doors swinging shut. Ruby stood alone in the sterile, bright hallway, dripping wet, her uniform ruined, shivering from the cold and the shock. She wrapped her arms around herself, sliding down the wall to sit on the linoleum floor. She had saved him. She hoped she had saved him. She didn't see the automatic doors slide open 10 minutes later. She didn't see the 4 men walk in. They wore suits that cost more than the hospital wing. They moved with a synchronized, lethal grace. And at the center of them was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite and darkness. Dante Moretti had arrived, and he was looking for his son. The silence in the waiting room was artificial. It was the kind of quiet that tried to mask the smell of antiseptic and fear. Ruby had been sitting there for 20 minutes, staring at the clock, her wet clothes clinging uncomfortably to her skin. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The air grew heavier, charged with a sudden violent electricity. Ruby looked up. 5 men were striding down the corridor. The nurses at the reception desk stopped typing. A security guard straightened up, looked at the men, and then wisely looked away, pretending to be busy with his phone. The man in the lead was terrifyingly handsome. He was tall, over 6'3", with broad shoulders that strained against a charcoal suit. His hair was dark, slicked back from a face defined by a sharp jawline and eyes the color of cold steel. He didn't walk. He stalked. "Where is he?" His voice was a low rumble, but it carried across the room like a gunshot. The head nurse, a formidable woman named Barbara, who usually took no nonsense, looked pale. "Sir, you can't be back here." "My son," the man said. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. The menace in his tone was absolute. "Leo Moretti." "Where is he?" Ruby's breath hitched. Moretti. Everyone in the city knew that name. You didn't see it on billboards, but you saw it on the sides of construction trucks and concrete mixers. You heard it in whispers in the back of bars. The Moretti family ran the docks, the unions, and if the rumors were true, half the underground gambling rings on the West Coast. Barbara swallowed hard. "Dr. Evans is with him in Trauma Room 1. He's stable, Mr. Moretti. He's stable." The tension in the man's shoulders didn't drop, but his eyes closed for a brief second. A moment of human weakness in a monster. "Who brought him in?" Dante Moretti asked, opening his eyes. They scanned the room, predatory and sharp. Barbara pointed a shaking finger toward the corner where Ruby was huddled. Dante turned. his entourage of 4 men guards. Ruby realized shifted their stance, hands hovering near their waistbands. Dante walked toward her. Ruby stood up. Her knees were shaking, but she refused to cower. She had dealt with drunk patrons, aggressive landlords, and sleazy managers. She wasn't going to let a mobster intimidate her, even if he was beautiful in a terrifying way. Dante stopped 2 feet from her. He towered over her. He smelled of expensive cologne, rain, and tobacco. He looked her up and down, taking in the dirty waitress uniform, the wet sneakers, the mud on her hands. "You," he said. "Me," Ruby replied, her voice surprisingly steady. "Where did you find him?" "In the alley behind the rusty anchor, on 5th. He was in a puddle, unresponsive." Dante's jaw tightened. A vein throbbed in his temple. He looked back at one of his men, a scarred man named Bruno. "The nanny, we found her," Bruno said, his voice gravelly. "She was, distracted. At a bar." Dante's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Handle it." Bruno nodded and walked away, pulling out a phone. Ruby felt a chill that had nothing to do with her wet clothes. She knew what "handle it" meant in their world. Dante turned his attention back to Ruby. Why what? Why did you help him?" "You could have called the police. You could have left him." Ruby frowned, offended. "He's a child. He was dying. I didn't think about who he was. I just saw a little boy who needed help." Dante studied her face, looking for a lie. He was used to people wanting things from him. Money, power, favors. He was used to deceit. But in Ruby's brown eyes, he saw only exhaustion and a spark of defiance. "Dr. Evans," Dante said, turning as the doctor emerged from the trauma room. "Doctor." Evans looked tired. He removed his glasses. "Mr. Moretti, Leo had a severe allergic reaction to something he ate, compounded by mild hypothermia. His airway was closing up. If he had arrived 5 minutes later, well, the brain damage would have been irreversible. Or worse." The doctor looked at Ruby. "This young woman performed CPR in the car, or kept him upright. I kept his head up so he wouldn't choke," Ruby whispered. "And I drove fast." "You saved his life, miss," Dr. Evans said. "There is no doubt about it." Dante looked at his son through the glass of the trauma room, then back to Ruby. The aggression in his posture faded, replaced by something complex. A debt had been incurred, and a Moretti always paid his debts. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a checkbook. He clicked a gold pen. "How much?" Dante asked. Ruby blinked. "Excuse me. For saving my son, how much do you want?" 10,000, 50,000. He began to write. Ruby felt a flush of anger rise up her neck. It was hot and sudden. She stepped forward, swatting the pen away from the paper. The sound echoed in the quiet room. The bodyguards flinched, stepping forward, but Dante held up a hand to stop them. He looked at Ruby, genuinely surprised. "I didn't save him for your money," Ruby spat. "I did it because he's a human being. Keep your blood money." She grabbed her purse from the chair. "I have to go. I'm late getting back to work, and if I lose my job, that's on me. I'm glad Leo is okay." She brushed past Dante Moretti, the most dangerous man in the city, and walked out of the hospital into the rain. Dante stood there, holding the checkbook. He watched her go. "Bruno," Dante said softly, not turning around. "Boss. Find out who she is. Everything. Debts, family, enemies. I want to know everything about the woman who just told me to go to hell." The fallout was immediate. When Ruby arrived back at the rusty anchor, the lights were off. The door was locked. Taped to the glass, soggy in the rain, was a note written in Sharpie. Fired. Left the back door open. Rats got in. Don't come back for your check. It pays for the exterminator. Stan. Ruby stared at the note. The rain plastered her hair to her face. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw a brick through the window. Instead, she just leaned her forehead against the cold glass and sobbed. That check was for rent. It was for the electric bill. She drove home in a daze. Her apartment building was a crumbling brick structure that smelled of mildew. As she walked up the 3 flights of stairs, she saw the piece of paper taped to her door. Eviction notice, 3 days to vacate. She unlocked the door and collapsed onto her futon. It was over. She had practically $0 in her bank account, no job, no home in 3 days. And all because she did the right thing. No good deed goes unpunished, she whispered to the empty room. 2 days passed. Ruby spent them frantically applying for jobs. Dishwasher, maid, telemarketer. No one was hiring immediately. She sold her grandmother's necklace at a pawn shop for $80 just to buy groceries and gas. On the 3rd evening, she was packing her meager belongings into boxes. She didn't know where she would go. Maybe sleep in her car until she found something. A knock on the door made her jump. It was a heavy, authoritative knock. The landlord, she thought. Coming to kick me out early. She swung the door open, ready to fight. I have until tomorrow morning, you can't. The words died in her throat. Standing in her dimly lit hallway was Dante Moretti. He wasn't wearing a suit today. He wore a black turtleneck and dark jeans, making him look less like a businessman and more like a thief in the night. He held a large basket wrapped in cellophane. May I come in? He asked. Ruby stood paralyzed. How did you find me? I'm Dante Moretti, he said simply, as if that explained the laws of physics. I find things. He stepped past her before she could invite him. He looked around the small studio apartment. He saw the peeling wallpaper, the single-burner stove, the boxes packed with clothes. He saw the eviction notice on the counter. His face remained impassive, but his eyes darkened. You're leaving? He asked. I'm being kicked out, Ruby corrected, closing the door. And I lost my job, because I left the diner unlocked to rush your son to the hospital. Dante set the basket on the small table. It was filled with fruits, chocolates, and expensive toys. Leo wanted me to bring you these, Dante said. He woke up yesterday. He remembers you. He calls you the rain angel. He wouldn't stop crying until I promised to bring you a gift. Ruby's anger softened slightly at the mention of the boy. How is he? He is weak, but he will recover. The doctors said his throat closed up within minutes. You are the only reason I still have a son. Dante turned to her. The intensity of his gaze made Ruby want to step back, but the room was too small. I offered you money. You refused. You have pride. I respect that. He took a step closer. But now, you have no job and no home. Pride does not keep you warm, Ruby. I'll figure it out, she said, lifting her chin. No, you won't. Not alone. Dante reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. He placed it on the table next to the eviction notice. Ruby looked at it. It was a deed to the building she was standing in. I bought the building this morning, Dante said casually. The landlord was persuaded to sell. You are no longer evicted. Ruby's mouth dropped open. You bought the building? The whole building. It was a negligible expense. I also had a conversation with your former employer, Stan. The Rusty Anchor is currently undergoing a surprise health inspection. I doubt it will open again. You destroyed his business. He fired the woman who saved my son. He is lucky I only destroyed his business. Dante's voice was cold, a reminder of the violence that lived just beneath his skin. I can't accept this, Ruby said, panic rising. I can't accept an apartment building from you. I don't want to owe you. You don't owe me. I owe you, Dante corrected. But if you refuse the building, then accept the job. What job? Leo needs a caretaker. The last nanny was... Let go. He trusts you. He asked for you. You need a job. I need someone I can trust with his life. The pay is $5,000 a week. Live in, at my estate. Ruby laughed, a hysterical short sound. You want me to live in a Mafia boss's house? To be a nanny? I'm a waitress, Mr. Moretti. I don't know how to raise a rich kid. He doesn't need a rich kid's upbringing. He needs someone who will run into a storm for him. Someone who doesn't care about the money. Dante moved closer, invading her personal space. He smelled of rain and danger. He reached out his hand, brushing a stray hair from her face. His touch was electric, sending a jolt straight to her stomach. Come work for me, Ruby. Or stay here in a building you're too proud to own with no job and no food. It's your choice. Ruby looked at the boxes. She looked at Dante's steel-grey eyes. She thought of the little boy with the terrified face. If I do this, Ruby whispered, it's strictly professional. I'm the nanny. That's it. Dante's lips curled into a ghost of a smile. It was the first time she had seen him look anything other than murderous or stoic. It made him devastatingly attractive. Strictly professional, he agreed. But as he looked at her, Ruby saw a hunger in his eyes that had nothing to do with gratitude. She had just made a deal with the devil, and she had a feeling the price would be much higher than she realized. The drive to the Moretti estate took 40 minutes, moving from the crumbling concrete of the city center to the winding, tree-lined roads of the highlands. Ruby sat in the back of the armored SUV, her single suitcase resting in the trunk. She felt like an imposter. She was wearing her best outfit, a pair of dark slacks and a white blouse she usually saved for interviews, but against the plush leather interior of the car, she felt cheap. We are arriving, Bruno grunted from the driver's seat. Ruby looked out the window. Massive iron gates topped with spikes that looked less like decoration and more like medieval weaponry swung open slowly. The driveway was long, winding through manicured lawns that looked like they had been cut with nail scissors. And then the house. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress disguised as a mansion. Stone walls, towering windows, and a silence that felt heavy. It was beautiful undeniably, but it lacked warmth. It was a place where secrets were kept, not where children played. The car stopped. A valet opened the door. Ruby stepped out, clutching her purse. The front doors opened, and a line of staff stood waiting. But Ruby didn't look at the maids or the butlers. She looked at the small figure standing at the top of the grand staircase. Leo. He looked better than he had in the alley. He was wearing clean pajamas and holding a stuffed bear. His face was still pale and dark circles shadowed his eyes, but he was standing. Leo, Ruby breathed. The boy's eyes widened. He didn't speak. He hadn't spoken since the incident Dante had told her. But he moved. He ran down the stairs, ignoring the maid trying to slow him down, and launched himself at Ruby. She caught him dropping to her knees to embrace him. He buried his face in her neck, his small hands gripping her blouse tightly. "I've got you," she whispered, stroking his hair. "I'm here." From the shadows of the hallway, Dante Moretti watched. He leaned against a marble pillar, his arms crossed. He had never seen his son react to anyone like that. Not the previous nannies, not the doctors, not even him. It stirred a strange feeling in his chest, relief mixed with a sharp pang of jealousy. "He likes you." A sharp, feminine voice cut through the moment. Ruby looked up. Standing near Dante, looking at her with eyes like ice picks, was a woman. She was stunning with platinum blonde hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing a red dress that looked like it cost more than Ruby's entire life earnings. "I'm Vanessa," the woman said, walking down the stairs, her heels clicking ominously on the marble. She didn't offer a hand. "I manage the household affairs for Dante, and I assume you are the hire." Ruby stood up, keeping a protective hand on Leo's shoulder. "I'm Ruby, the new nanny." "Nanny?" Vanessa laughed softly, a sound devoid of humor. "We'll see." The last 3 lasted less than a month. Leo is difficult. And looking at you, I doubt you have the experience for a high-profile environment. Did you even go to university? Ruby stiffened. "I was studying nursing before I had to drop out to work. I know CPR first aid and you know how to wipe tables." Vanessa interrupted, her smile tight. "Dante told me where he found you. A diner waitress. How quaint." "Enough." Dante's voice rolled through the hall. He pushed off the pillar and walked toward them. Vanessa's expression instantly shifted to one of warmth as she looked at Dante. "I'm just vetting her, Dante. You know we can't be too careful. Security risks." "She is not a risk," Dante said, stopping beside Ruby. The proximity of his large frame made Ruby's heart race. "She is the only reason Leo is breathing. Treat her with the same respect you show me." Vanessa flinched as if slapped. Her eyes darted to Ruby with pure venom before masking it. "Of course, my apologies. I just want what's best for Leo." "Then let Ruby do her job," Dante said. He looked down at Ruby. "Bruno will show you to your quarters. They are next to Leo's room. Dinner is at 7. Formal." I don't have formal clothes, Mr. Moretti," Ruby admitted, feeling her face heat up. Dante looked at her, then at Vanessa. "Vanessa, fix that. Have a wardrobe brought to her room within the hour." "But the boutiques are—" Vanessa started to protest. "Within the hour?" Dante repeated his voice, dropping an octave. Vanessa clenched her jaw, her knuckles white. "Yes, Dante." As Ruby led Leo back up the stairs, she felt the weight of Vanessa's stare burning a hole in her back. She had entered the lion's den. Yes. But she hadn't realized there was a viper waiting in the grass. The first week was a blur of adjustment. The quarters Dante had given her were larger than her entire apartment building. She had a balcony, a private bath with a tub the size of a swimming pool, and a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud. But Ruby didn't rest. She focused entirely on Leo. She learned that Leo loved drawing but hated loud noises. She learned he was allergic to peanuts, obviously, but also terrified of thunder. She learned that he was smart, incredibly smart, but he had locked his voice away inside a box of trauma after his mother died 3 years ago. Ruby didn't push him to speak. She just talked to him. She narrated her life, told him funny stories about rude customers at the diner, and read to him for hours. And slowly the color returned to his cheeks. However, the war with Vanessa was constant and silent. Vanessa would accidentally schedule Leo's meals when Ruby was in the shower. She would give the maids conflicting orders to make Ruby look incompetent. She would switch the laundry so Ruby's clothes shrank. It came to a head on a Thursday evening. Dante was hosting a business dinner. Ruby knew enough about the Moretti family now to know that business meant organized crime. The guests were rough-looking men in expensive suits. Ruby was in the kitchen preparing a special herbal tea for Leo, who had a stomachache. Vanessa swept in, holding a glass of wine. "You shouldn't be down here. The help stays upstairs during meetings." "Leo needs his tea," Ruby said, stirring the pot. "You're trying too hard," Vanessa hissed, stepping closer. "Do you think he doesn't see what you are? A gold digger. You found a rich kid, played the hero, and now you think you can sleep your way into the master bedroom." Ruby turned off the stove. She turned around, slowly. "I don't care about his money, Vanessa, and I certainly don't care about your opinion. I care about the boy. Something you seem to forget. I have been with Dante's family for 10 years, Vanessa snapped. "I was supposed to be the one to raise Leo. I was supposed to be more. And then you drag your cheap sneakers in here." She reached out and knocked the mug of hot tea off the counter. It shattered, splashing hot liquid onto Ruby's legs. Ruby gasped, jumping back. "What is wrong with you?" "Oops," Vanessa smirked. "Clumsy. You better clean that up before Dante sees." "Before I see what?" Dante stood in the doorway. He had come in for a bottle of scotch. He looked at the shattered ceramic, the steaming puddle, and the red burn marks forming on Ruby's shin. Then he looked at Vanessa's smug face. "She dropped it," Vanessa lied smoothly. "I told her to be careful." Dante walked into the kitchen. He didn't look at the mess. He looked at Ruby. "Are you burned?" "I'm fine," Ruby said, grabbing a towel. "It was an accident." Dante grabbed her wrist, stopping her. He pulled her gently toward the light to inspect her leg. Then he turned to Vanessa. "There are cameras in the kitchen." "Vanessa," Dante said quietly. Vanessa's face went white. "I checked them this morning because the cook complained about missing supplies. I haven't turned the feed off." Dante's voice was lethal. "If I check the footage from 2 minutes ago, what will I see?" Vanessa trembled. "Dante, She provoked me. She's disrespectful. She doesn't belong here. She belongs here because I say she belongs here." Dante roared, the sound vibrating off the walls. "Get out of my sight. If you touch her again, if you so much as look at her wrong, your father's loyalty will not save you. Do you understand?" "Yes," Vanessa whispered, tears of humiliation springing to her eyes as she fled the room. Dante turned back to Ruby. He knelt down, the king of the underworld, kneeling on his kitchen floor, and wetted a cloth with cold water. He pressed it gently against her burn. "You should have told me she was harassing you," Dante said, not looking up. "I can fight my own battles," Ruby said, her voice shaking slightly. Not from pain, but from his touch. Dante looked up. Their faces were inches apart. The air between them crackled with a tension that was thick and dangerous. He looked at her lips, then her eyes. "You don't have to fight alone anymore, Ruby," he murmured. For a moment, Ruby thought he was going to kiss her. She wanted him to. God, she wanted him to. But he stood up abruptly, his mask of indifference sliding back into place. "Put some ointment on that. I have a meeting." He walked away, leaving Ruby breathless and terrified of the feelings growing in her chest. 2 weeks later, the atmosphere in the house had shifted. Vanessa was ghost-like, avoiding Ruby entirely. Leo was thriving. He had started smiling, really smiling. But Dante was tense. He spent hours in his office. Men came and went at all hours of the night. Ruby would wake up to hear low voices and the click of weapons being checked. She knew something was happening in the city. A turf war. One sunny Tuesday, Leo was restless. He stood by the window, pressing his hand against the glass, looking at the distant city skyline. Ruby found Dante in the library. He was reviewing a map spread out on the desk. "He needs fresh air, Dante," Ruby said. "Real air, not just the backyard. He wants to go to the science center. They have a dinosaur exhibit." Dante looked up, rubbing his temples. "It's not safe, Ruby. The Romanos are making moves on the south side. The streets are hot." "We won't go to the south side. The science center is in the neutral zone, isn't it? And you have an army. Can't you spare a few men for your son?" Ruby challenged him. "He's a prisoner in this castle." Dante sighed. He couldn't deny her. He couldn't deny Leo. "Fine," he said, "but I'm coming too." And we take the armored convoy. The outing was almost normal if you ignored the 6 bodyguards surrounding them in a phalanx formation as they walked through the dinosaur exhibit. Leo was in awe. His eyes were full as he looked at the T-Rex skeleton. For the first time, he reached out and grabbed Dante's hand. Dante froze, looking down at his son's small hand in his giant palm. He looked at Ruby, who smiled softly. For a moment, they looked like a family. A strange, dangerous, beautiful family. But the peace was a lie. On the way back, the mood changed. They were taking a back route to avoid traffic, a road that wound through an industrial district. "Bruno, slow down," Dante said, suddenly leaning forward. "That van up ahead. It's riding too low." "I see it, boss." Bruno set his hand, moving to his holster. Suddenly, the van in front of them slammed on its brakes, drifting sideways to block the road. "Ambush!" Bruno screamed. "Heads down!" Ruby didn't think. She grabbed Leo, unbuckling him and shoving him onto the floorboard, covering his body with hers. Bang, bang, bang. Bullets hammered the SUV. The armored glass spiderwebbed but held. The sound was deafening. "Reverse! Get us out of here!" Dante roared, pulling a sleek black handgun from his jacket. He didn't look scared. He looked furious. Bruno slammed the car into reverse, but another car smashed into their rear bumper, boxing them in. "We're pinned! Everyone out!" Dante commanded. "To the warehouse! Move!" The door flew open. Dante was out first, firing with terrifying precision. 2 men in ski masks fell. He reached back in, grabbing Ruby's arm. "Run!" he shouted. "Do not let go of Leo!" Ruby scrambled out, dragging Leo. The air smelled of burnt rubber and gunpowder. Bullets zipped past them like angry hornets. She saw one of the bodyguards take a hit to the shoulder, spraying blood on the pavement. They ran toward an abandoned warehouse structure. Dante and Bruno provided cover fire, their guns booming rhythmically. They made it inside the concrete shell of the building. It offered cover, but they were trapped. "Bruno, call for backup," Dante barked, checking his magazine. "Jammers!" Bruno spat, looking at his phone. "No signal. They planned this. They knew the route." Dante's eyes went dark. "A mole. Papa." The tiny whisper stopped time. Dante spun around. Leo was standing behind a concrete pillar, clutching Ruby's hand. He had spoken. For the first time in 3 years. "Leo," Dante breathed. "Watch out," Ruby screamed. She saw the shadow before anyone else. A gunman had flanked them, entering through a side window. He raised a rifle, aiming straight for Dante's exposed back. Ruby didn't think about the physics. She didn't think about the pain. She launched herself forward, Not at the gunman, but at Dante. She shoved him hard. The rifle cracked. Dante stumbled as he was pushed, the bullet missing his spine by inches. But Ruby wasn't so lucky. She felt a sensation like a hot poker being driven through her side. She spun around from the impact and collapsed onto the dusty concrete floor. "No!" Dante's scream was a sound of pure animalistic horror. He raised his gun and fired 3 times. The gunman dropped dead before he hit the ground. Dante was at her side in an instant. He pressed his hands over the wound on her waist. The white blouse was turning red, the blood spreading terrifyingly fast. "Ruby, look at me," Dante yelled, his voice cracking. The composure of the Mafia Don was gone. "Bruno medkit. Now." Ruby blinked. The world was going fuzzy. The warehouse ceiling was spinning. She saw Leo crying, reaching for her. Is he okay?" she wheezed. "He's fine. You saved him. You saved me." Dante said, his hands shaking as he applied pressure. "Why did you do that? You stupid brave woman." "Professional. Duty." She mumbled, a faint smile touching her lips before her eyes rolled back. "Stay with me," Dante commanded. "That is an order, Ruby." But the darkness was heavier than his voice. As she slipped into unconsciousness, the last thing she felt was Dante Moretti pressing his forehead against hers, whispering a prayer she didn't know he knew. Outside, the sound of sirens and screeching tires signaled the arrival of the backup. The cavalry had arrived. But as Dante lifted Ruby's limp body into his arms, carrying her out of the wreckage like she was the most precious thing in the world, he knew one thing for certain. Whoever did this was going to die slowly. And whoever had leaked their location, whoever had betrayed them from the inside, would beg for death before he was finished with them. The waiting room of St. Jude's Medical Center felt like a recurring nightmare. Just weeks ago, Ruby had sat in these plastic chairs, shivering in a wet waitress uniform, praying for a boy she didn't know. Now Dante Moretti sat in the same spot, covered in dust and dried blood, most of it Ruby's praying to a god he hadn't spoken to in years. The hospital wing was on lockdown. This wasn't just a medical emergency. It was a siege. Moretti soldiers lined the hallways, their presence terrifying the staff, but ensuring absolute security. No one got in or out without Bruno's permission. Dr. Evans emerged from the operating room, looking far older than he had the last time. His surgical gown was stained. Dante stood up. The movement was stiff, his body aching from the crash, but he didn't feel it. He only felt the cold, gnawing void in his chest where his heart used to be. "Talk to me," Dante commanded. His voice was a rasp. "She's alive," Dr. Evans said, and Dante felt his knees almost buckle. The bullet fractured a rib and lacerated her liver. There was significant internal bleeding. We had to remove a portion of the liver and repair the artery. She lost a lot of blood, Dante. Too much. Will she wake up? She's young. She's strong. But she is in a medically induced coma to let her body heal. The next 48 hours are critical. If she doesn't develop an infection, if her vitals stabilize, she has a chance. A chance. Dante repeated the words, tasting like ash. Just a chance. It's the best we have, Dr. Evans said gently. You can see her, but only for a moment. She needs rest. Dante nodded. He turned to Bruno, who was standing by the elevator phone, pressed to his ear. The large man looked furious. "Bruno," Dante said. Bruno hung up. Boss? Stay with Leo. He is in the private pediatric suite. Do not let him out of your sight. If a fly buzzes too close to him, kill it. Understood. And the investigation. Dante's eyes shifted. The grief vanished, replaced by a cold, demonic rage. I will handle the investigation. Someone knew our route. Someone knew we were taking the back roads. That information was not digital. It was spoken in the house. You think it was the staff? I think, Dante said, adjusting his bloodied cuffs, that we have a rat, and I am going to skin it. Dante returned to the estate 2 hours later. He hadn't showered. He wanted the blood on his hands. He wanted the smell of violence to cling to him. It was a reminder of the debt that needed to be paid. The house was quiet. The staff moved like ghosts, sensing the master's mood. Dante walked straight to the security room in the basement. It was a wall of monitors. The head of IT, a nervous man named Felix, was typing frantically. Show me, Dante said. I pulled the logs, boss, Felix stammered. No outgoing calls from the guards. No texts. The jammers in the attacker's van suggest they were waiting for us specifically. They knew the timing. Who had access to the route schedule? You, Bruno the driver, and the house manager. Dante stared at the screen. Vanessa. She accessed the logistics file on the server at 900 a.m., 2 hours before you left. Dante didn't yell. He didn't smash the console. He became perfectly, terrifyingly still. Where is she? She's in the drawing room, sir, having a drink. Dante turned and walked up the stairs. The sound of his footsteps was heavy, deliberate, like the tolling of a funeral bell. He pushed open the double oak doors of the drawing room. Vanessa was sitting on the velvet sofa, holding a crystal glass of brandy. She looked up, her face arranging itself into a mask of concern. Dante. Oh my God, I heard on the news. A shootout. Is Leo okay? Is she okay? Dante walked to the fireplace. He picked up a heavy iron poker. He tested its weight in his hand. Leo is fine, Dante said softly. Ruby is dying. Vanessa's hand trembled slightly, the liquid in her glass rippling. That's terrible. But at least you and Leo are safe. That's what matters, isn't it? She knew the risks when she took the job. Did she? Dante turned to face her. Did she know the risk included a traitor in the house selling our location to the Romanos? Vanessa went pale. Traitor Dante, surely you don't think... You accessed the file at 900 a.m., Dante said, walking toward her. You called a burner number registered to the east side at 9:15 a.m. I have the logs, Vanessa. Vanessa stood up, backing away. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Dante, wait, please. It wasn't supposed to be like this. They promised me no shooting. Dante stopped. They promised you. They just wanted to scare her. Vanessa screamed, tears streaming down her face. Romano said they would just hijack the car, take her and dump her out of town, scare her so she'd quit. I did it for us, for this family. She was ruining everything. Dante, she was changing you. She was taking my place. Your place. Dante laughed, a dark, hollow sound. You never had a place, Vanessa. You were an employee, a useful asset. Now you are a liability. I've served you for 10 years, she sobbed, falling to her knees. I raised Leo when his mother died. I love you, Dante. Doesn't that mean anything? You sold my son to his enemies because you were jealous of a waitress. Dante said, his voice void of any pity. You almost killed the only woman who has made my son smile in 3 years. Dante looked at the door. 2 guards entered. "Take her," Dante ordered. "Where?" Vanessa shrieked as they grabbed her arms. "Dante, please don't kill me." "I'm sorry. I'm not going to kill you," Dante said, turning his back on her. "Death is too easy. You are going to the shipment containers at the docks. You're going on a long trip, Vanessa, to a place where the name Moretti means nothing. You will arrive with nothing. No money. No identity. If you ever return to this city, if I ever see your face again, then I will kill you." "Dante, no." The doors closed, silencing her screams. Dante stood alone in the silence. He dropped the fire poker. It clattered loudly. He felt no satisfaction, only a desperate, clawing need to be back at the hospital, to be back with her. 3 days. That was how long Dante sat in the chair beside Ruby's hospital bed. He didn't sleep. He barely ate. He just watched the rise and fall of her chest, listening to the rhythmic beep of the monitor. Leo was there too. He sat on the foot of the bed, drawing pictures of dinosaurs and placing them near Ruby's hand. The boy refused to speak again, his voice locked away by fear once more. But his presence was a silent vigil. On the 4th morning, the rain returned. It tapped against the window pane, a gentle echo of the storm that had brought them together. Dante was holding Ruby's hand, his head bowed, resting against her mattress. "Your hand is heavy," a voice whispered. It was weak, scratchy, like dry leaves. Dante's head snapped up. Ruby was looking at him. Her eyes were groggy, half-lidded, but they were open. They were brown and warm and alive. "Ruby," Dante breathed. He stood up, leaning over her. "Do not move. You are hurt." "I remember." She winced, trying to shift. Did I get him?" "Get who?" "The guy with the gun. Behind you." Dante let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. "Yes, you saved me. You foolish, incredible woman. You jumped in front of a bullet for me." "It was part of the job description," she murmured, a faint smile ghosting her lips. "Bodyguard duty. That was not in the contract." Dante said, his thumb stroking her cheek. "You were supposed to be the nanny, not a shield." "Is Leo?" "He is here." Dante lifted Leo up. The boy's eyes filled with tears. He threw his arms around Ruby's neck, burying his face in her shoulder, careful of the bandages. "Hi, Bug," Ruby whispered, kissing his head. "Miss Ruby," Leo whispered. Dante froze. Ruby froze. "He spoke," Ruby gasped, looking at Dante. "He called me Papa in the warehouse." Dante said, his voice thick with emotion. "And now, you brought his voice back, Ruby. You brought him back." Dr. Evans rushed in, checking monitors, beaming. "She's awake. This is excellent. Truly excellent. But she needs rest. Mr. Moretti, perhaps you should let her sleep." "No," Ruby said, her hand tightening on Dante's. "Stay." Dante looked at the doctor. "I'm staying, Tra." Recovery was slow. It took 2 weeks before Ruby was allowed to leave the hospital. When she did, she didn't go back to her apartment building. She went home, to the estate. But things were different now. There was no Vanessa. The staff treated Ruby with a reverence usually reserved for royalty. She wasn't just the nanny anymore. She was the woman who had bled for the Don. She was made in the only way that mattered by blood and loyalty. On her first night back, Ruby sat on the balcony of her room, looking out at the gardens. The moonlight turned the manicured hedges into silver sculptures. She heard the door open. Dante walked in, He carried 2 glasses of wine. Dr. Evans said no alcohol with the painkillers, Ruby noted. It's apple juice, Dante said, handing her a glass. Sparkling. He sat in the chair next to her. For a long time, they just watched the moon. Why did you do it? Dante asked finally. The question that had haunted him. Do what? Take the bullet. You could have stayed hidden. You could have run. Ruby looked at him. The moonlight softened the hard angles of his face. I told you in the hospital. It was my job. Don't lie to me, Ruby. You don't take a bullet for a paycheck. Ruby swirled her juice. I didn't do it for the money. I did it because Leo needs his father. He's already lost his mother. He couldn't lose you, too. And what about you? Dante asked, leaning closer. What do you need? I don't know, Ruby admitted softly. I've spent my whole life just trying to survive. Paying the next bill. Fixing the next problem. I never stopped to think about what I wanted. I know what I want, Dante said. He reached out, taking the glass from her hand and setting it on the table. He took her hands in his. His grip was warm, possessive. I have spent my life building walls, Dante said. Fortresses. Armies. To keep the world out, to keep my family safe. But the danger was already inside. And the safety came from a diner in the rain. He pulled her gently toward him. She didn't resist. You are not the nanny anymore. Ruby, Dante whispered, his gaze dropping to her lips. I fired you this morning. Ruby's heart hammered against her healing ribs. You fired me. Yes, I cannot have my employees sleeping in my bed. It's against HR policy. Ruby laughed a breathless sound. You don't have an HR department. I do now, Dante smirked, and the new position I have in mind for you comes with a lifetime contract, no exit clause. Is that a threat, Mr. Moretti? It's a promise. He kissed her. It wasn't tentative. It wasn't gentle. It was acclaiming. It tasted of apple juice and danger, and a passion that had been simmering since that first night in the hospital waiting room. Ruby melted into him, her hands tangling in his dark hair. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt like she was breathing. 6 months later. The charity gala for St. Jude's Children's Hospital was the event of the season. Every socialite politician and business mogul in the city was there. The doors opened and the room went quiet. Dante Moretti walked in. He looked as dangerous as ever in a tuxedo that fit like a second skin. But he wasn't scowling. He looked content. On his arm was a woman who took the room's breath away. She wore a gown of shimmering midnight blue, hiding the faint scar on her waist. Her dark hair cascaded over her shoulders, and diamonds glittered at her throat, the Moretti family diamonds. And walking between them, holding both their hands, was a young boy in a miniature tuxedo. Leo! Leo! A photographer shouted. Give us a smile! Leo! Moretti didn't hide. He looked at the camera, squeezed Ruby's hand, and grinned. That's my mama, Leo said, his voice clear and proud. The crowd murmured. The press snapped photos. Dante looked down at Ruby, ready to face the wolves. Ruby looked at the flashing lights, then up at the man who had given her the world, and the boy who had given her a purpose. Let them come. Ruby smiled, her eyes fierce. I've handled worse than wolves. I've handled the dinner rush. Dante laughed, kissing her hand. Together, the king, the queen, and the prince of the city walked into the light, ready for whatever storm came next. because this time they weren't facing it alone. And that, my friends, is how a simple act of kindness in the rain changed the destiny of an entire criminal empire. Ruby didn't just save a boy, she saved a beast, and in return, she became a queen. From a waitress with nothing to the mother of the Moretti legacy, karma really does have a way of paying back the good ones, doesn't it? If this story gave you chills, or if you teared up when Leo finally called her Mama, please smash that like button. Let's try to get this video to 10,000 likes to unlock the next Mafia romance series. What do you think, was Vanessa's punishment enough, or did she deserve worse? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. I post new dramatic stories every single day, and you don't want to miss the next twist. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.